When you start learning Spanish and you start listening to the Spanish, you quickly notice there's a lot of pronouns. Now, there's all kinds of pronouns, but there is one particular kind which tells us that we are dealing with a reflexive verb. So let's see how it works. Hello and welcome to another lesson with me, Eva. Today we will be talking about reflexive verbs, and I have already mentioned in the intro the so-called reflexive pronouns. So whenever you see a verb in its infinitive form, meaning when you find a verb in a glossary or a dictionary before it's been conjugated, you will always see it in its, let's say, the original form, the so-called infinitive, okay? And in Spanish, you know that there are only three groups of verbs when it comes to conjugations, when it comes to the way these infinitives look. So they either end in ar, er, or ir. Now, if any of these verbs, whether they are from the ar, er, or ir conjugation, also have an ending se, so we might see ducharse. Yes, there is an ar, but it's followed by se. That tells us it's a reflexive verb. Okay? Now, what are reflexive verbs? What's so special about them? Well, the first thing to know is that this se here will also be conjugated. Okay? So this reflexive pronoun se will be conjugated together with the verb. So we won't only be conjugating the verb duchar, we will also be conjugating this pronoun or changing it, okay? I know we don't conjugate pronouns, that's not the correct way to say it, but just to keep it simple, because they go hand in hand, the verb and its reflexive pronoun, we will just say that we are conjugating both, okay? So that's the first thing. But really, before you even start conjugating it, you need to understand sort of the philosophy, the mindset, or you need to have the right mindset to understand what reflexive verbs really are, okay? So I told you what they look like, but what are they really and why are they different from other verbs? Well, you have to keep in mind that usually we have someone, if you have a verb, then we have someone who's doing it, okay? Whether it's writing or reading or singing or cooking or any other verb, someone's got to be doing it, okay? And linguistically, when you look at a sentence, the person or maybe the thing doing it is the subject, okay? So this is where the action originates, okay? In case of a reflexive verb, this is also where the action ends, okay? So just think of the word reflexive or reflection. What comes to your mind? The first thing that comes to my mind when I think of a reflection is a mirror, okay? And what happens with a mirror? We look into it, we look in the mirror, but what do we see? Do we see someone else? No, we see our own image, okay? So we sort of look out, but actually we end up looking at our own image, at ourselves. And that's the same with a reflexive verb. We are the origin of an action, but the action is sort of reflected back, and basically whatever the action is, we are actually doing it to ourselves. So we are the origin, but also the end of an action. We are where the action originates, where it starts. We are the instigators, so to speak, but we also are at the receiving end, okay? And in Spanish there are a lot of reflexive verbs. In fact, even verbs that could just function as a normal verb, they like to sort of turn them into reflexive verbs. They like to add this reflexive pronoun, and it kind of makes it a bit more, I don't know, personal, no? What you could say, I bought a pair of shoes, but saying I bought myself a pair of shoes kind of has, it's still the same meaning, basically. We still bought a pair of shoes, that hasn't changed, but it kind of sounds a little bit like I treated myself to a pair of shoes, okay? Good, so let's see how it works with this pronoun. The verb will be conjugated according to, you know, the rules of conjugation, okay? With the verb, you can do anything you like. You can conjugate it or use it in the present tense, in the future tense, in past tense, first person, second person, singular, plural. So you can do whatever you like with the verb. Obviously, the verb will be changing all the time, but we will also see this pronoun change with it, okay? And the changes will go hand in hand, okay? So if the verb is in the first person singular, the pronoun will be in the first person singular, okay? And to help you with that, to see how they basically, and again I'm going to use the word mirror, how they mirror each other, I'm going to draw two grids, okay? My favorite tool when it comes to verbs in Spanish and conjugation is this famous grid, okay? So I'm going to draw two grids. One will be for the pronoun, the reflexive pronoun, and one will be for the verb, okay? In both cases, okay, this is reserved for the first person singular, meaning I. This is second person singular, you. This is third person singular, he or she. In English there's also it, but in Spanish we also have usted, the formal way of saying you. This is first person plural, we, second person plural, you, the plural you, and third person plural, they, okay? So with reflexive verbs, if the verb is in the first person singular, we will be using the pronoun for the first person singular, okay? If the verb is in the third person plural, we will be using the pronoun for the third person plural, okay? So let's see these pronouns, okay? Because these pronouns, these reflexive pronouns, are the same no matter what verb we have here and no matter what tense we are conjugating it in, whether we are conjugating it or using it in the present tense, future, or the past. These pronouns, these reflexive pronouns, will always be the same. So for me, in English you would say myself, the Spanish say me. In English you would have yourself, the Spanish say te. In English you would have herself or himself, and in Spanish there's only one, se, okay? Plural, ourselves is nos, yourselves is os, and then themselves is again se, okay? There won't be any confusion between this and this se, because the verb will tell us whether this se is herself or himself, if the verb is he. But if the verb is he, then we will know to translate this as themselves. Okay, good. So, for example, just to give you an example, I already mentioned ducharse. Ducharse, okay? So, ducharse is to have a shower, okay? So, I'm not giving my kids a shower, I'm having a shower myself, okay? I'm having a shower. So, in Spanish, ducharse. Without se, it's to give a shower, okay? But with se, we know that we are giving a shower to ourselves, okay? So, just to keep it simple, let's conjugate duchar in the present tense. Presente indicativo. It would be ducho, I shower. Duchas, you shower. And ducha, he, she showers. Okay? We is duchamos. You is ducháis. And they shower is duchan. Okay? Again, if this simply means to shower and we don't have the pronoun, we don't need to worry about these pronouns here. But this is a lesson about reflexive pronouns. We do have this reflexive pronouns here, and let's see how it works. I have a shower in Spanish is me ducho. Me ducho por la mañana, o me ducho por la noche, o me ducho 2-3 veces al día. No, maybe I have a shower twice, even 3 times a day in summer. So, me ducho, I have a shower. You have a shower, te duchas. He or she has a shower, se ducha. We have a shower, nos duchamos. You have a shower, os ducháis. And they have a shower, se duchan. Okay? Again, we can conjugate, we can use this verb in the future. For example, me ducharé, I will have a shower. Te ducharás, se duchará. Nos ducharemos, os ducharéis, se ducharán. We could use it in the past. Okay? It doesn't matter. Okay? The pronouns will never change. The pronouns will always be the same. Okay? We can change the verb, we can use it in different tenses, but the pronouns will still remain the same. Okay? Now, speaking of verbs that are reflexive, we can go and divide them further. There is a group, or there are reflexive verbs that really only exist in reflexive form. We can't use them any other way. Ducharse, as you've seen, can either be reflexive if we are having a shower ourselves, or it can be just a normal verb where we are performing an action but actually someone else is at the receiving end. Okay, so I could be helping my kids with their shower, or I could be giving them a shower or a bath. It doesn't matter. Okay, same thing. Bañar. Bañar would be either to have a bath, in which case it's reflexive, bañarse, or to give a bath is bañar. Okay, taking this away, it's to give a bath. Okay, so going to this first group of verbs which only exist as reflexive verbs. Okay, one example, a really good example, is arrepentirse. Okay, so I will write it here. arrepentirse, okay, it means to regret, no? And we only have regrets when it comes to our own actions or omissions or things we should have done or shouldn't have done, okay? So I can't regret something that you or someone else has done, no? I always regret my own actions, my own, let's say, omissions from the past. So this one will always be reflexive. We will always feel bad about something that we have done or haven't done, but maybe should have, okay? So arrepentirse is an example of a verb that only works as a reflexive verb. Then we have another group, and you've already seen two examples, and basically this other group, the meaning of the verb will not change whether we use it as reflexive or not. Duchar is always to give a shower, have a shower. Bañar is always something to do with bathing or having a bath, okay? Whether we are having a bath ourselves or giving a bath to someone else. But the meaning of duchar, bañar, and many others doesn't change just because it is now reflexive, okay? So if you are going through a dictionary or you have a glossary or a list of verbs, you might find duchar, but you might also find ducharse, okay? But either way, these two mean the same, okay? The meaning of duchar or bañar doesn't change. But then there is a third group where once we take a normal verb and, let's say, turn it into a reflexive verb, the meaning will change, okay? So the same meaning is here, and then the third one is different meaning, okay? So, for example, encontrar, it means to find something, okay? Maybe you were looking for someone or for something or for a place. Encontrar means to find, okay? After searching for something, you hopefully find it, okay? Encontrar. Encontrarse can mean that you meet up with a friend, you meet up with someone, either by plan or you run into someone in meet up, run into, so by coincidence, without any plan, but it also means to feel. Ay, me encuentro muy cansada. I feel very tired. Me encuentro, okay? So, once we added this se, once we transformed a perfectly normal verb, encontrar, into a reflexive verb, the meaning changed, okay? So encontrarse con alguien could be to meet up with someone or to run into them without having really arranged it beforehand, but it also means to feel. For example, ¿cómo te encuentras? How are you feeling? ¿Cómo te encuentras? No? How are you feeling? Okay? Another example is volver. For example, volver means to return, to come back. Okay, so I will write that meaning here, return, but it's different from volverse, which means to become. So suddenly you become a different person, or you turn into someone different. Se volvió loca. She became so crazy. She turned crazy. She went crazy. Or, okay. So volver means to return, to come back, and volverse means to become different, to turn into something different, okay, or start behaving in a very, very different way, okay, or become rich, okay. Maybe it's not about behavior, maybe it's your status in the society to become rich, to become famous, no? So again, we see that this return is very different from becoming something new, something different, no? The meaning of this verb changed once it became a reflexive verb, okay? Good. Okay, so this is just so you get an idea how some verbs are purely reflexive. We can't do anything else about them. They only exist in their reflexive form. Some can be both, okay? Some can just be normal verbs, but also reflexive, in which case either the meaning remains the same, okay? Duchar is always duchar, whether it's duchar or ducharse, bañar, bañarse, or we suddenly get a whole completely different meaning when the verb becomes reflexive, okay? Good. And again, just to remind you, reflexive verbs will tell you immediately that they are reflexive because they will have this se at the end of the infinitive. So you won't just see duchar, you will see ducharse. And that tells you, okay, this is a reflexive one. So this se, I can't just ignore it. This se will now have to be conjugated together with the verb, okay? And it will always be mirrored, okay? Me will always go with ducho, te with duchas, se with ducha, nos duchamos, os ducháis, se duchan, okay? So that's the way the reflexive verbs are conjugated. And again, just practice, as I say a lot. Practice makes perfect, so just practice, repeat, 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 and it will become natural to just add these reflexive pronouns before the verb. Now, having said before the verb, there are 3 instances where the reflexive pronouns actually appears after the verb. You've already seen it here in the infinitive. Okay, so we have the verb and then the reflexive pronoun. The same thing happens. So here we see it with the infinitive. The same thing happens with the gerund. So I'll just use the same one here. Duchando. And because duchando works for all of them, just like duchar works for all of them. We haven't started conjugating it yet. Duchando me. Okay, and we will need tilde here. So duchando me, okay, again we have the verb and then followed by the pronoun, okay? And the third instance where the pronoun will be after the verb is the so-called imperative, when we are giving I don't know, orders, instructions, and I might say to my kid, go wash your face, lávate la cara. Okay, maybe they've been out playing and they come in all dusty, and I tell one of them, lávate la cara. Again, the pronoun came after the verb here, okay? So these are the 3 instances where the pronoun, the reflexive pronoun, will come after the verb with the infinitive, form, with the gerund form, and with imperatives when we're giving orders, when we're giving instructions. In all other cases, we will have the pronoun precede the verb. Okay? Good. Okay, well, that will be all for today. I hope you now understand sort of the philosophy behind reflexive verbs and how they are reflected back to us. Okay, it's how we do something, but we do it back to ourselves. And also the mechanics, how they work, how they're conjugated, and how they're not conjugated alone. They have a companion in these reflexive pronouns. Okay, take care, and I'll see you in the next lesson.